All right. Well, we are live. So, good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's Sunday, 10th of May. So, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. So, if you still have a mother, then give her a call today or give her a hug. Let her know how important she is to you because mums are incredible people, of course. So, if you are hearing me and seeing me okay, then can you do me a big favor and just type a one in the comments. That'll just give me some confidence that this is streaming correctly. So just go ahead and type a one, and then we'll jump into it. All right. So as I said, this is a live stream. This is episode 7 of what I'm calling the Digital Marketing Playbook. So a couple of weeks ago, I talked about how your website in general is often losing patience for you. I talked about how sometimes maybe the messaging is off, how other factors can be a problem. One of the things I talked about is how your booking process may have friction in there, and that is what we're doubling down on today, and I'd like to dive deeper into. So I want to talk about the booking process, how people actually book in for a consultation at your clinic, and why that process could be losing patience for you. So we're going to look at 3 things today. We're going to look at why patients drop off before booking. We'll talk about why clinics often miss this problem. It's a silent problem that goes unrecognized. And we'll look at some things that you can do to remove that booking friction. So I'm going to start as usual with a few bold assumptions here. So I'm assuming that you're watching this today because you are the owner or manager or planning to become the owner or manager of an optometry practice, an audiology practice, or an ophthalmology practice. And I'm also going to assume that you're here because you are interested in growing that practice. And if anything that I talk about today resonates with you or you'd like to know more about, then you can reach out to me through my agency's website, which is opticsdigital.net, and there'll be some contact details at the end of the live presentation. So first, a little more about me. So I've been in digital marketing and website consulting since 2008. About 4 years ago, I started Optics Digital Marketing, and since that time, we've helped more than 20 independent practices in Australia to grow their business. And so now my agency team works with optometrists, ophthalmologists, audiologists who need structured marketing systems to help them grow. And that could be for any stage of your business. So if you have an established online presence and now you're looking to scale that up, that's great. That we have something which we call accelerator packages for that. But if you're still in the early stages of your independent business, then we have what we call a foundation package as well, or a foundation plan, where we look at things like, is your messaging on target? Are you building online authority? Do you have in place proper tracking systems for measuring success? And is your booking process smooth and frictionless? And so that's what we're going to talk about today, that last point in particular. All right, so let's talk about why do patients abandon the booking process? Well, and this shouldn't be a huge surprise, but people abandon the booking process if it seems to be difficult, if there are things that are unclear, and if it's slow. Okay, so difficult, unclear, and slow, those are the biggest culprits. So specifically, like what are some things that might be causing patients to bounce when they come to your website? So one is, and this is a common problem, is that the phone number is hard to find on mobile. A lot of people, still like to dial a phone number and talk to somebody actually in your clinic. But if they have to hunt on the website for that phone number, then that's adding friction to the process. Related to that is often these phone numbers are not clickable. So if I can see your phone number, but I'm frantically pressing the thing and nothing's happening, that's going to frustrate me. So what it means is I have to get a pen and paper, write it down somewhere and then call. Could be a lot smoother than that. Talk to your webmaster about how to make these phone numbers all clickable. Small text is hard to read, so especially on mobile phones, especially people who are sort of like middle-aged and older who might have presbyopia. You're forcing them to go get their reading glasses. So I want you to like imagine a situation where you've got a shop that sells wheelchairs, and but you don't have in place an accessibility ramp or an elevator. So you're making it more difficult than it needs to be for people to come into your come into your shop to buy those things. And I mean that's hyperbole, of course, but I think it's ironic that I see so many eye care practices with websites which have obvious accessibility issues. Like text is very small. There's poor contrast between the text and the background, so it's hard to read. Just things like this, So put a bit of thought into your target audience and maybe maybe some of the visual struggles that they have when they're actually trying to work their way through your website. So think about that. Small buttons, like if you got fat fingers like me, sometimes it's hard to be clicking in the right place if the target button is quite small. So make sure that those buttons are sufficiently large. So sometimes there's no online self-booking option, right? So not everyone likes to pick up the phone, make a call. So like for me, I avoid the phone. I would much rather make a booking online if I can. But I think a lot of people, especially younger generations, they expect to have some kind of online booking option available, particularly when it's like outside of hours. Like if it's 10 o'clock at night, then I don't expect somebody to pick up a phone. So now I've got to leave a message and hope they call me back, or wait until tomorrow. It's just adding friction. Too many appointment choices in the booking form. So I think I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago that I had a family member who tried to book in her son for an appointment at the local optometrist, and she said to me, "Look, there's just so many options on the form here, and I don't know which one I should be choosing." There's actually a pretty famous marketing study that was done years ago, where they went to a farmer's market, and there was a one stand set up, and they were selling jams, and they were selling like this one store was selling like 3 types of jams, I think, and they were the control in the experiment. And then they took another stand which was selling like 18 different types of jams. So, and they did this over a few weeks. So which one do you think ended up getting more sales? Which one sold more jam? It wasn't the one with the 18 variety. It was the one with the 3 varieties. And so this is an important principle in marketing, that if you give people too many choices, then often the choice that they default back to is to choose nothing. So you can overwhelm people when you have these booking forms with too many options on them. Really think about what is the minimum that you need to be offering. Unclear appointment descriptions, so if like I talked about my family member, so if it's not clear, what people are booking in for, then that creates uncertainty as well. Asking for too much information. So I see some really long patient booking forms, and I wonder why it's really necessary to collect all this information. And sort of some of the feedback I get from practice owners as well. It's, this is helpful for us when we've got them in the clinic. And I would say, yeah, okay, I get that, but if you're sort of discouraging people from making a booking in the first place, then that's all kind of a moot point, isn't it? So I think you can get somebody booked in, and then as a follow-up procedure, ask for a lot of this information. And I mean, if somebody's a repeat visit, you definitely shouldn't be asking for all this unnecessary information if you've already got it in your patient database. So think about, what do you really need to ask for? What is the essential information that you need to get from a potential new patient at that first interaction? And then it's, just basic logistical things like, well, fees. Okay, so fees and payment options. Like in the case of optometrists, some charge for an OCT, others don't. How much do you charge for like a dry eye treatment? If I'm just going in there for a lid debridement, that's one thing. But if I'm going in for an IPL treatment, that's another thing entirely. So I think when people are uncertain about how much something's going to cost, they keep looking at other options where the pricing is a bit more transparent. And like when I'm looking at our clients and looking through their Google Search Console history, one of the common search terms that I see is bulk billing. Do you offer bulk billing? So that's obviously something that a lot of people are looking for. Now that type of patient may not be your target patient. That's that's fine. But if that's the case, that's even an even better reason why it should be clear on your website, and as part of the booking process, do you bulk bill? What are the payment options? Do you have like a payment installment plan? This might be something particularly relevant for the ophthalmologists out there, like the laser refractive surgeons. So a lot of these clinics have installment plans or payment plans. Audiologists, maybe the same. Maybe your audiology clinic has an installment plan for the more premium hearing aids. Also, maybe people, maybe a lot of people don't know about the government programs around the more budget hearing aids. So it's probably helpful to have all that information up front. And I think also just the basic stuff around, like, what times are you open? Where are you located? Do you have parking available? Are you wheelchair accessible? All of these things. So we're just really basic logistic stuff. So there was a study I heard about recently where I think it was in 2021, 22. There was a university that offered flu vaccinations, and they got some students coming in for that. And then the following season, the following flu season, they did a similar promotion, but this time they provided much more information about when to go for your shot and where to go. And they saw the uptake increase by about 300%. So sometimes, these basic facts can really contribute to a much greater uptake. You're making the stepping stones much more visible for people to take the action that you want them to take. So so all of this might sound like very sort of obvious stuff, which begs the question, why are these issues still there with so many practice websites? And I think a lot of it comes down to clinic owners never experience their own booking process the way a new patient does. Okay, so that experience of a fresh pair of eyes on your website, on your booking form, you can't replicate that yourself, right? You you're probably very familiar with your business. You're probably very familiar with your website, very familiar with your booking system. But people coming to your website URL for the first time, they are not. So they're seeing things and experiencing things in a much different way. So I think it's really worthwhile to do some UX testing, so user experience testing. So even if it means like getting some random individual, maybe like a friend, relative, whatever, sitting them down at a computer, showing them your website and saying, okay, imagine you're a patient. I want you to show me how you would go about making an appointment with us. And then just watch, say nothing, listen, and just listen to them verbalize what they're doing as they're doing it. And you can learn a lot from that. Trust me. I think anyone who's done this process has nearly always walked away with some insight they never had before. Now there are some online services that can sort of like do this at scale for you. There's one site that I've used in the past called userfeel.com. So what they do is they can take participants, and they can help with recruiting these participants too, by the way. But they will sort of like record the session. So everyone who does this UX test, they sit down and the camera records what they're doing on the screen, and the microphone picks up them talking about what they're doing, and this whole session gets recorded for you. And so you can do like, I'd say probably 3 as a minimum is it's a good start. The more you can do, the better. So this type of UX session testing is really quite valuable in my experience. There's another one that I found recently called useberry.com. So their pricing is a little bit more transparent. So they list their service at $79 per month. And I mean, you only need to do it probably for a month or 2. You don't need to do it as a continuous thing. Another tool which I have used in the past, I think I've mentioned this, is there's a free tool called hotjar.com, although they may have actually rebranded to something else now, but that URL is still the right one. And so what Hotjar does is it screen records people as they come to your website, like, anonymously, of course. There's no personal information captured, but you can see as people move, or as people scroll on the web page, as they click on stuff, you even get like a nice sort of like heat map from it of where people are moving the cursor on the screen, which is a useful proxy for where people are looking on the screen. So we tend to move our cursor to things that capture our attention. So that can be useful. Although I am kind of like a little bit ambivalent about it, because you can see what people are doing, but not why they're doing it, I think it's the why that's really quite important. All right. So does any of this make sense so far? If this is making sense to you, could you do me a favor and type a 2, number 2, in the comment box? All right. So okay, so I've mentioned that one of the reasons why this doesn't get picked up by clinic owners is because they're not experiencing their own website in the way that a new visitor might be. But there are some other reasons why these things often go missed, and often are just a silent background problem that they're unaware of. One reason is because a lot of you probably have like really good reception teams that compensate for bad systems. So your staff on the phone, maybe, or in person, they're explaining a confusing booking process, or they're explaining the options. They're guiding people through the booking system that might be on the telephone, right? They answer questions that really the website should be answering. So like this is all a best case scenario. So if these problems are there, then this is a best case scenario that your staff are actually, they're covering up for gaps in the process. But at the same time, like this is consuming valuable work hours that could be productively put into other things. I'm sure you've got other things that your staff could be doing if there were more hours in the day. Like I can only talk about from my wheelhouse, which is marketing. So I think that most eye care and hearing care practices don't put enough effort into their social media. I wish I had $1 for every time I've asked clients to, upload more photos to their Google business profile. All of these things, these are things that you could be delegating to someone in your team. But the pushback I sometimes get is, well, our guys are really busy already. They don't have time for any of this. Well, maybe if your booking process was a little smoother, maybe that would free up some time. Okay. This is how you scale. This is how you grow a business. Another reason why clinics miss the problem is because your website analytics, if you're even looking at your website analytics, your website analytics like Google, for example, you might be able to see how much traffic you're getting, how many visitors you're getting to your site, but those statistics don't necessarily highlight how many people are abandoning a booking process. And this is why when we're implementing one of these foundation packages for clients, as I talked about, one of the things that we usually like to do is implement through Google Tag Manager some way of tracking button clicks. So if you've got a website, then you've definitely got some important buttons on there that you want people to click. So you should be tracking these. These are key events. You should have some sort of mechanism in your Google Analytics for tracking these key events, and that includes telephone links as well. Another reason why these problems go unnoticed is because it's positive confirmation bias. Okay, you're only seeing the patients who successfully went through the booking process. You're not talking to all the ones who didn't, all the ones who bounced. Okay, you're only seeing their successes. You're not seeing the failures. Also, I think a lot of clinics really underestimate how little patience people have on mobile phones, in particular mobile devices. People who are on their mobile phones are usually, they're in some situation where their time is limited, and they really don't want to faff about with something on their phone. So I think for a mobile experience in particular, you really got to keep things simple as possible. The old KISS principle, KISS. Keep it stupid simple. All right. So does anyone have any questions? If you have any questions, now would be a good time to pop them in the comment section. All right. So how can we remove some of these frictions from the booking process? Well, I've talked about all the things you can do to make phone bookings a lot easier. Make sure you've got a phone number at the top of the screen on mobile devices. So this is like a basic thing, user experience goal. I believe every phone number, every website should have a phone number, a clickable phone number at the top of the screen. It's the obvious place where people look. Make it easy for people to book online through your forms. Like I said, make sure the buttons are clear. Make sure they're easy to click. Make sure that the page loads quickly. So there have been some studies over the years, and you can find them if you do a Google search, which talk about how a large percentage of people will abandon a website if it takes more than 3 seconds for the page to load. Last week I talked at length about bad hosting, bad web hosting, and how that's costing you money. So go back and take a look at that if you're interested. I see some websites that have like a contact email address. I think that's a really bad idea for a few reasons. So for one is there are bots that go through and scrape websites looking for anything that looks like an email address, and then they add those emails into like spam mail lists. So anytime that you put your email address on your website, you're basically waving a big flag saying, come and spam me. So there are ways of getting around that and avoiding that, but I think that you really don't want to encourage people to just send you an email from Gmail or Outlook or whatever they're using. Another important reason for that is also emails often end up in spam folders, right? So there's a lot of reasons why that happens. And then you get into this like email game of tag where they send an email, you send an email back. Maybe they don't see it, maybe they reply to something earlier in the thread, and just gets very messy. So which is why I think it's much better if you're going to have an online booking option, it should be in some sort of structured format, a contact form, and those forms can have things built into them which are really much better at filtering out spam. I talked about having the mission critical information very clearly as part of the booking process. So information about where you're located, it's a good idea to have a Google map embedded on your booking form. Make sure you clearly show what times you're open, and also make sure that those times are correct and they match what's on your Google business profile and your Facebook page for that matter. So I've seen businesses. I had this experience recently where I wanted to go to a local bookshop, and their website said they were open at one set of times, Google business profile another set, and their Facebook page said something different. So in the end, I had no idea whether the shop was going to be open or closed when I turned up there. Have some kind of appointment reminder follow-up in place. So I think a lot of patient management systems probably already do this. There is a service in Australia. I think it's called Eye2Eye, which actually they'll take care of telephone follow-ups for you. I'm not associated with that service. There's a blog post about it on our website if you want to learn more. But that can increase the or it can reduce the number of no-shows from people who are just forgot that they had an appointment. Life's busy, other things get in the way. So have some sort of like a appointment confirmation process. So whether that's telephone, whether that's email, or whether that's an SMS message. When you are gathering information from people, so make sure that you can get all those essential contact details like phone number and email address and name. On your form, those should all be required fields. So nobody can submit the form unless they at least give you those details, right? Which you're going to need to get back and respond and probably confirm the booking. So have a book online button on your Google business profile if possible. So on the right of the screen here, you can see this is a screenshot of one of our clients, their Google business profile. So you can see that there's a prominent book online button there. So when you're filling out the details on your Google business profile, there's a section where you can put in a link to your website. There's another section where you can input a booking URL. Now there are certain platforms out there which are what they call Google preferred partners. So they've been basically vetted and approved by Google. When you are using one of those booking platforms and you input a URL directly to your platform profile page, then Google gives you this book online button. So it's very obvious. It's very, it's just making the booking process a lot smoother for people who want to go ahead and make a booking from your Google business profile. Now, so I said that these are what Google calls a Google preferred partner. My Health First, which is a very popular online booking platform, they are one of these partners. HotDoc is another one. So we've got clients who are using both of those, and they have this book online button available to them. Health Engine is another popular one, but with that one, so I think the Health Engine is an approved Google partner for some medical industry verticals like dentists, I think GPs, maybe chiropractors, physios. If you're any of those, if you're in any of those professions and you're using Health Engine, then you can get this book online button. But as of this moment, if you're an optometrist, ophthalmologist, or audiologist, you probably won't. Okay, so that is what it is. But just be aware. So I'm not saying that one's better than the other. So your choice will depend on a lot of in-house things for you. But if you are using My Health First or HotDoc, then you should be able to get one of these book online buttons to appear, which is going to increase your bookings. Yeah, so make it easy for patients to cancel or reschedule, right? So, as much as we want patients to book, it's even worse if they make a booking and then don't turn up. These no-shows, they eat up your available times. There's an opportunity cost there. So you should have some systems in place, some processes that make it obvious how patients can cancel or reschedule if they need to. So that's quite important. I see some cases where you click on the book now button and it'll redirect the visitor over to a third party website. Now, well, that'll still work, but I think it's a much better user experience if you keep them on your website. So if, for example, when they click on that book now, then they get kind of like a pop-up with all of them, and they still stay on the same web page, but they get a pop-up which they can go through and fill out the form. So they stay where they are. A lot of people don't like being redirected to a third unknown URL. So and it's understandable. So sometimes people might have clicked on a link and they get sent to a spam site or an infected website. So that's going to make some people unhappy. But if you can, try to keep them on your website. And again, talk to your webmaster about this. So most of these booking platforms, they make it easy for you to just embed a booking form on your site. What else can we do? Well, I think one thing that you should be doing over time is what we call A/B testing. So you should be like trying different button options, so try different button colors, try different button text, maybe a different page design, different layout, different headlines, right? So now it takes time to get enough data to actually make statistically meaningful decisions about all of this. But if you have a website built with the option to do some kind of A/B testing, then it's really worthwhile doing. So I talked, some weeks ago about choosing a platform for your website, and most agencies that I know of will recommend WordPress. It's the most popular platform for small businesses. One of the reasons is that it has a lot of these like add-on marketing modules that you can install, often for free or at least very, affordably. So there are plugins which I've used, which will allow you to do this kind of A/B testing. So it can work behind the scenes. So one person comes, they might see a green book now button, somebody might see an orange book now button. Okay, and you can just test little things like this over time and see if there's a statistically meaningful improvement in one over the other. And it might not sound significant, but if you think about it, like if you get like 100 people who come to your contact page, and 10% of them end up making a booking, right? So it's a 10% conversion rate. If you can move that from 10 out of 100 to 12 out of 100, that might not sound like much. So you're only going from 10% to 12% conversion. You've just increased your conversions by 20%. So 12 divided by 10, that's a 20% increase. So even like little improvements like this, little improvements at the margin, can often have big effects when we're looking at your funnel, your booking funnel, and how many people end up booking at the end of that. Another thing which my agency has done for a number of clients is install a chat bot. Okay, now a lot of people, I think in it's 2026, a lot of people now expect to be able to get answers in real time to the sort of critical questions that they have. Does your clinic, does your eye care practice offer this brand of sunglasses, for example? Does your audiology practice offer earwax removal, that sort of thing? So yes, of course, a lot of this information might be on your website, and they can, if they look for it enough, they could probably find it. But as I said, a lot of people now expect to have some kind of a chat bot, some kind of an AI assistant who will answer their questions for them. Now, in the medical space, I recognize that you really don't want your chatbot to be giving advice on medical related issues. That's probably not a good idea, but we can train these chatbots so that they only answer the types of questions that you want to provide answers to. And if somebody does ask a question like, my eyes, I have this condition with my eyes, what should I do? Then we can train the chatbots to give a response more along the lines of, well, it's really necessary for you to make an appointment, so we can give you, professional treatment. That's the kind of response that you really want it to give. So we can train your chatbot that way. For example, a lot of questions for optometry practices is around eyewear. Like what type of brands do you have? What kind of lens upgrades do you provide? If my glasses are broken, I bought them from you 2 years ago, can I bring them in and get you to fix them? Stuff like that. There's no reason why a chatbot can't be answering it. And I go back to what I said before about taking some of the pressure off your frontline staff so that they can be doing other productive things. So if this does interest you, by the way, and you would like to try one of these chatbots on your clinical website, then reach out to me, and I can give you a 3-month free trial. You can see for yourself whether it's providing value. At nothing else, if you get nothing else from it, you will get some interesting insights about the type of questions that people are asking, and that might give you some guidance about what information you need to add to your website. So as I said, if you are interested in adding some kind of a chatbot feature, then reach out to me through LinkedIn or send me an email. There'll be some contact details at the end of this live presentation. Another thing we can do is solicit user feedback. I talked about Hotjar before. I think one of the tools which they have through their service is you can install a just a little feedback widget on your site. Okay, so if you look at the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, it looks something like this. So you've probably seen these before. So so how would you rate this experience? We've got the grumpy face to the happy face. And then when they choose one of those, then the next page will ask for a few more details, a bit more information that actually is probably more helpful for you as the website owner. Now, I would say, the caveat to this is that people who leave feedback are probably going to be the people who have had unhappy experiences, and some of that may be valid. Some of it won't be, but nevertheless, there might be some nuggets of really insightful information that you're getting from that. All right. So, does anyone have any questions at this point? This is a good opportunity. If you've got something that I've mentioned that you'd like to know more about, now's a good time. So, put a question in the chat box before we finish. All right. So, I want to leave you with a thought here. So, a patient's first experience with your practice is the booking process, not the consultation. So, I'll just reiterate what I said before. So I understand why a lot of practices may have these kind of, detailed intake forms, but if that's the first experience that you're presenting to potential patients, then you're going to discourage a lot of them. So make your own judgment on this. But all I would say is that if your goal is to get more bookings, then I think you really should take a good hard look at does your booking process contain the kind of friction that I've talked about today. So you've got to really put some consideration into how smooth that whole intake experience is, because if there's friction, if it's difficult, if it's unclear, if it's slow, a lot of people just won't be bothered. All right, so if you would like to reach out to me, so you can do that through my agency's website, which is opticsdigital.net. You can contact me directly on LinkedIn, or you can email me at paul@opticsdigital.net. All right, so I hope this live is helpful and informative for all of you guys out there. So let's leave it there for today. Hope you have a great Sunday, and see you again next time. Bye for now.